In reality, only a select few individuals hold the power of influence. Not a power over a luxury item never to be owned, but real influence over police, governments, and even clandestine fraternities. My true story is so controversial that I invite you to comment and even question my integrity. The Ultimate Influencer, Episode 1, The Index Offence. I've changed the name to protect the innocent, although some of the names, whilst innocent, remain as pseudonyms. So how can I describe my story? Well, it's a true story, which is significant because most stories are typically referred to as based on a true story, often to avoid potential legal issues. I get that, and that's why mine is a true story. Speaking of legal issues, I've encountered many throughout my experiences. A common thread running through my narrative is the exploration of family, trust, relationships, entrepreneurialism, loss, gain, justice, and in many cases injustice. Next, I want to discuss how to achieve success in the face of extreme adversity and against forces that seem deliberately set against us, or certainly me in this story anyway. If I can overcome these forces of evil to achieve my goals, then so can you. This all may sound fairly typical, and you might wonder why you should take the time to listen when there are countless other interesting podcasts out there. I've intentionally kept the initial podcast short. If you stop listening at the end of this podcast, you may not be as curious as I'd hoped. The roller coaster is just beginning to climb before it plunges into a fierce and emotional wave of excitement, often at the same time with despair and a multitude of other emotions. Look, enough talk. Let me engage you into my personal story. March the 11th, 1998 was a day like most others. I was living in a one-bedroom council flat in Essex after being schooled in the same area for about 26 years. I was born in Queen Mary's Hospital in Stratford, East London, and I have two younger brothers, Paul, who's 5 years younger than me, and Bert, who's 7 years younger. All of us were born within the sound of Bow Bells in East London, Stratford for me and West Ham for my two younger brothers. Now at this point in March, we are working together as indentured carpenters and joiners alongside our mentors and master shipwrights, shipbuilders, boat builders. My father's name is also Paul and his younger brother is named Terry. We are working on a refurbishment of a shop and the above accommodation in Dulwich Village, South East London. No, not Deptford or Peckham, let's say the finer parts of the area. And when I refer to fine, I'm talking about the affluent section, since being down to earth and genuine rarely aligns with wealth, as wealth is abundant in the hearts of the poor and the downtrodden. This Wednesday, March 11th, 1998, and we're all looking forward to the weekend. Like most young tradesmen, we're all living hand to mouth, existing as weekend millionaires, enjoying entertainment in the clubs and bars of London's West End. More often than not, we found ourselves borrowing money from our mum to cover the fares and food to go to work until the next payday. It wasn't that we were earning low wages, quite the contrary. Our earnings often hovered around £1,000 a week. However, our love of partying and designer clothes meant that after paying our mum's upkeep, we blew the rest on shopping and the London nightclubs. In fact, our mum returned our upkeep as a loan until the next payday, but she took care of us and taught us the fine art of chivalry and respect, establishing a long foundation for our trusted name in the East End of London and then Essex. We were waiting for some building materials to arrive, and unfortunately they were delayed until the next day, which proved an excuse to go home early. We left our tools on site and travelled back home. I had moved out within a year, and I was only a car park away in a one-bedroom council flat across the road. I completely refurbished it myself, albeit owned by Thurrock Council. We dropped Bert off at his garage, located at the entrance of our street, whilst he wanted to work on detailing his car, which was a diamond white Ford Sierra RS 500 Cosworth. This was a car that most 30-plus-year-olds desired, and he was only 20. His insurance and fuel bills alone consumed most of his wages each month, although he had the same party antics shared with his older brothers and his off-on girlfriend, Michelle. Michelle was the same age as Bert and a single mum. Her child's natural father, Darren, was a local hairdresser, but had no interest in the child other than the odd weekend. Meanwhile, Paul also loved cars, but he was experiencing a tough time after getting too involved in the rave scene, as we all did. He was suffering from a broken heart due to the recent breakup with an ex-girlfriend. He fell into a period of depression and faced a breakdown, unfortunately, which he needed prescription antipsychotic drugs. Recyclidine, to manage the side effects of what was being diagnosed as drug-induced psychosis. Psychosis is a mental health issue that temporarily distorts the person's perception of reality. In my brother's case, it resulted from substance abuse. Paul has a big heart and tends to attract children and young animals, or is it the other way around? But seriously, he's a really genuine guy, and he possesses a lovely sense of humour, energy, and he's very daring, has been all his life. And that draws lovely women to him, despite often appearing reserved and carefree. Brian's not looking to run around womanising, he's just interested in one serious girlfriend at a time, and he puts heart and soul into it. And that's why, or part of the reason why, he's in, a little bit of a dark position at the moment, because he's just split up with his girlfriend, who he really loved. I often worried if I'd ever seen my brother return to his old happy-go-lucky life again. It was hard to witness this depression and paranoia, although his GP had reassured us that, with time, prescription medication and avoidance of the party scene, that he'd come back to his old self, which gave us all hope. At the time, I was single and dating again after an on-off relationship with a budding actress, although the breakup wasn't that recent. Anyway, my brothers showered and asked me if I wanted to go to the local pub with them, the pub we all knew as the Plough, although at that time it was named the Village Inn, following its refurbishment. This refurbishment we actually did it ourselves. It was only across the road. In any event, I thought I'd have a night indoors, watch the football and just take a pizza and some beer. As I drove down South Road, I slowed down and looked to my right and caught sight of the Village Inn. I couldn't help but strain through the front doors and see my brother sitting at the bar, laughing away, a couple of kids floating around, and everything seemed normal. Thought he was having a good time, so I carried on Sainsbury's at Thurrock. I mean, it wasn't a bad place to watch a match. I've watched plenty of matches there, but I just fancied sitting at home. We'd always been a close-knit family, and I knew that I'd be in for a good night in the Plough, filled with banter, beer and some football. It was tempting, but as I say, I just fancied a night off. I carried on to Sainsbury's, got some food and beer, and left to go home. When I got home, I turned the TV on, and the match that was planned had been called off, and they were playing the West Ham Man United match. Couldn't believe it. Do I need to say I'm a West Ham fan? They were playing at Upton Park, their home turf at the time, and the crowd were screaming, as was I, when Trevor Sinclair scored the first goal. I jumped up, running around the room. Man U were playing well at the time, and for West Ham to go up was important. Just as I'm sitting there thinking, this is a lovely night, back at work tomorrow, everything's going well, I heard a buzz and the buzzer at my front door. And as I went to the intercom, I couldn't help but hear a woman's voice saying, "Quick, help, let me up, it's Michelle, I live across the road." I thought, what's she want? Michelle was in Bert's year at school. She lived across the road in the flats. I didn't really see much of her other than wandering up and down the street. I thought, fuck it, I'll let her in. So I buzzed the door and she came running upstairs. As soon as she got to the top, she was out of breath, hanging onto the railing. "Darren, there's been a fight. Someone's been killed and you're holding your brothers for it." I can remember the day as if it was yesterday. I don't even know what I was thinking or feeling. I don't know if it was shock. I don't know what it was. I just kind of went into numb. I'm looking at someone who's very real, saying something that's very real, and I'm touching the door and the walls. It's all real. And yet what I'm hearing doesn't seem to be real. I literally shut the door behind me, and you'd think I'd run, but I was walking. It's strange to say, and I've been embarrassed to say it in the past, because who would walk when someone tells you something like that? I just walked. Walked down the hallway, down the stairs, out the front door, and as I'm coming around the back streets to the close where I'd lived for so long, I'm seeing people that I knew, their families, their children. And this is going to sound mad, but they were having tea, biscuits on trays, sitting out the back of their houses in the garden, looking at the helicopter overhead. What the fuck's going on? I was walking down the backs of all these gardens and onto the pub, which was only just round the corner. When I got there to the side of the pub, it was a murder scene. There was police tape everywhere, the helicopter overhead, and it was so low I could see the pilots inside as clear as they were in a car in front of me. Next thing, stand behind the barriers, blared a voice from the helicopter speaker. And it was then that I caught my first glimpse of the body in the road. Green tarpaulin, never forget it, feet facing towards me, pointed outwards, a pair of dirty old boots on them. The fuck's going on here? Police running up and down, one copper ran past, he was with a fucking broken nose, his eyes bleeding. Next thing I turn around and there's my brother, Paul, on the floor screaming outside the pub. As I turn round, they've got him cuffed behind his back. They're kneeing him in the back. He's on his front on the concrete. And they're smashing him over the head with their batons. And they've got the gas scanners, the CS gas, up his fucking nose, squirting him. And he's just foaming at the mouth, screaming. So as I went, I mean, this is all slow motion. It sounds like I'm fucking wandering around. And I pretty much was. It's just, I can't only say shock. I don't know what it was. I was just fucking, don't know where I was. In any other situation, just fucking run at the old bill and just fucking iron them out. In this instance, I'm just fucking standing there walking up to him like it's a fucking walking up to a friend. And these weren't friends. So get the fuck off him. What you doing, you stupid cunts? Get the fuck off him. Then 3 of them run at me. We're going to nick you. Get away from him. Get away. We're going to nick you. Fucking nick. He's going off. Next thing, they've dragged him to his feet. He's coughing. He's spluttering. I said, he's got fucking asthma, you stupid cunt. What the fuck are you doing to him? They dragged him up. His hands bleeding. He's battered. Where the fuck's my other brother? I'm looking round. Everyone's acting normally. Other than the coppers. They'd fucking lost it. Next thing, I've looked across the car park about 30 foot away. It's my other brother. He's on his knees. There's a copper just standing behind him with his truncheon, just smashing him over the head. Oh, yeah, I fucking run over him. What are you fucking doing? He's talking to some cunt in a fucking puffer jacket. I'm sure one of the little wrong-uns that grassed all these fucking people up. I'm going to get to that. They didn't think I was going to get to that. They didn't think I was going to fucking name them. These no good little cunts. But here we are. And I apologise for the passion behind it. But you'll understand as time goes on why. Get off him, get off him. What the fuck are you doing? Copper stopped. These fucking antics. The geezer with the puffer jackets wandered off, slipped away up his own arse into the fucking distance. All the while, there's 100 people standing on the other side of the road, behind the tape, just fucking standing there. Sandwiches, everyone. Fucking, I can hear it fucking going. I can't believe it. I knew some of the people. Known them for years. It's like it's a fucking movie. It wasn't a film for me. It definitely wasn't for me brothers. I'm sure, certainly not from the geezer who's dead in the road. A couple of wagons pulled up and they put my brothers in them. Oh, fucking hell, I'm going to have to tell my mum and dad. So I turned around, walked a short distance through the back streets of the houses. Still walking, by the way. As I'm walking up to my family home, I'd lived there for 25, 26 years. And I've walked in, the front doors, the porch doors never locked. Never. As I walked into the hallway, turned left into the kitchen with Dad's there, he's in the corner, it's all normal. I've gone from one extreme to the other. Here I am in the kitchen. Dad hasn't got a clue what the fuck's going on. Want a cup of tea, son? Yeah, all right, yeah. I don't know what to fucking say, do I? But I want to say something. I've got to say something. Do you have sugar now, or are you still on that fucking diet again? He's fucking giving me stick, and I'm fucking just been to a murder scene. I said, forget the sugar. I think you better come and have a sit down. I've got to tell you something. Yeah, all right, I'll be in a minute. No, I think you better come and sit down. I've got to tell you something. What is it? What's up? And his voice is going up. I said, no, honestly. And he could see I was serious. No. What is it? Is it the boys? Where are they? What's going on? And he's just then walked into the front room, sat down in his chair. I said, look, I've got something to tell you. I said, there's been a fight around the pub. Someone's dead and they got the boys for it. No, fucking what? What? No, you're joking. I mean, obviously, these are just words as if I'd be joking. No. And with that, my mum's heard him. And she's upstairs in the little office we made for her. And she's come screaming out of the room, what's up? Who is it? What's happened? And my dad's gone round to the bottom of the stairs at that point. They said exactly what I said. Dad just said there's someone around a pub. He's dead and they got the boys for it. And, you'll hear some noises and some screams and hollers in your time, but I can tell you this, you'll never hear a scream of a mother who's just heard the worst news possible. And I tell you what, that noise, that scream is a fucking bell that I hear in my nightmares after that. My mother screams at her son's fucking attack at the pub. She's come floating down the stairs, and the 3 of us have just run out the front door. I say run, we're still walking. It's bizarre. Walked down the street, and what's happened? They're asking me. I'm trying to tell them I don't know, or what I do know, I'm trying to spit out. We arrived at the pub, and as we come back into it, the scene's still there, the helicopters up and around, the old people everywhere, the people are still out. As we've looked round, we saw this guy who was in the back of an ambulance that was next to the bus stop, right outside the pub. And the only way I can describe him is he looked like the actor, Fred G, who was the popman out of TV's Coronation Street years ago, in the early 80s, mid-80s. This guy's wearing a white long-sleeve collared shirt, black trousers, and you could have easily mistaken him for either an old bill or security guard or something, or doorman or something like that. The thing with this guy, though, was he had what I can only, again, describe as like a Pudsey Bear bandage across one eye. And he was then laying down in the back of the ambulance, As we turned round to look at everyone, my mum got on the phone. She phoned her brother Chris and asked him to come over. My dad phoned a friend of his, Tommy, who had many contacts in the legal world and owned a number of bars and pubs in the East End. We were then introduced to Paul Harris of Edward Fell, Bradshaw and Waterson, which is one of East End's most respected criminal law firms and one that had proven successes in defending criminal cases. We felt very confident that we had someone like Paul on our side, and we're lost. We don't know what's going on. We're just happy that we've had the support of a top solicitor. Anyway, within an hour or two of attending the scene, we went to see Michelle at her flat. And as we got there, two of the barmaids who was there that night, Kerry Agenbar and Stacey Westfield, who witnessed the whole thing, turned up. The police had been to speak with them and take statements. They told us that my brothers had been spiked up with something called DF118. We'd never heard of it before. I mean, I've been right through the rave scene, done all sorts of things, but never heard of these DFs. It turns out that these are prescribed drugs that were given to the deceased and his girlfriend Patricia from East Tilbury, only a day or two before the murder. Then we went back to my mum and dad's, and DS Graham Carter, who was in charge of the case, turned up, although David Bright was the commander of Essex Police and had overall control of this case. We were also told that another person was involved and had actually carried out the attack. His name was Craig Wicks. Michelle said that the police were aware of Craig was at the scene and received similar information on him being involved in the murder. Now, how many people are involved in this? We told the police and the solicitors to take blood samples due to what we'd been told with the DFs. We knew Brian J had been drinking because I was in the pub. But the police had taken Bert to Graysnick and Paul to Basildon, although Paul had to go to Basildon Hospital to stitch his cut hand. The old Bill wouldn't let us see either of them. My mum and dad are absolutely in bits. I was, but mum's fucking all over the place. Tears up and all over the place. Uncle Chris arrived and said he would go in the old Bill and find out what's going on. We reminded him to tell the police of the importance of the blood samples. Chris turned round and said to us, look, he'd been in and delivered the message to the old Bill, and the solicitor had arrived. He also said that at the custody suite, there was so much CS gas on Bert that the old Bill had to leave the custody suite because they were all taking the effects of the gas. Imagine having been gassed so much that just the gas coming off you is causing people the effects of the gas. We had little money at that time. The reason being, not because of the party so much, but my dad had invested all of his money up front on this building project. Labour, materials, everything. He cleaned himself out because he wanted to get involved with this building company and fund all their fucking work. I mean, there's no good time for these things to happen, but you need money, you need finance to carry you through, and unfortunately at that moment we were fucked. So look, we went to see my Nanny Vi. We was known to us, 76 and living alone in Avenons Road, Plaistow, E16. She also took the news fucking bad and gave us some money to get us through. She always looked after us. I mean, everyone says their nan is the best nan in the world. I get that completely, but ours really was. She was absolutely fucking unbelievable woman. And it's funny, when we used to walk around here, from little kids to grown men over 6 feet tall, we walk through the door and she'd always grab our ears, pull her head down, kiss us on the top of the head. It don't matter how big we was or how many of us come in, she'd always just grab us like that. And then walk us into the kitchen and feed us until we couldn't move. And then we'd sometimes fall asleep on the sofa. That's my nan. Good-hearted, lovely, genuine heart, lovely, lovely woman. So look, we had a couple of quid. It was enough to get us through until we could work out what was going on. We didn't even think of the job we'd had to walk away from to sort this out. I mean, I come from a very strong and tight-knit family, deep-rooted family values. And it was our family strength that held us together through any scenario. But here we were, faced with a test like no other. And it hadn't even begun yet. We were just bouncing around in disbelief. I can't explain the emotion. It was just all emotions at once, other than the happy ones, I guess. We couldn't even find a way of finding positivity. It was just too much. I mean, in my family lineage, ancestry, our family mainly have boys. We come from Ireland years ago, 150 years ago, County Wexford, Dublin, and our family, after a story, which I may or may not get into later on, came to England, came to London, the East End, and remained there. So most of my family live in street by street in the East End, Canning Town, Plaistow, East Ham, and all around the areas. Now, one thing I'm sometimes criticised for, and you may understand why when listening to this, that I have a few trust issues. When you listen to this journey, you wonder how I trust anyone. Because when you fight these sort of fights, you're not only giving 100%, you're giving everything. People give a number 100% and they think, well, that just means everything. But you don't really know what everything is until you're put to test. When your feet hit the ground and you're switched right on, you really find out what you're made of. And even when you think you're giving the max, then you won't believe how much more is in you. And it's sometimes, when looking back, the enlightenment of the situation, the experience, however terrible it was, because I now understand that in some strange way that in being tested, I'm able to achieve things that I would never have thought possible. So look, on my family, as I've said, I'm born in Queen Mary's Hospital in Stratford, East London, in May 1969. I remained there in a one-bedroom flat in Stratford until a free transfer to South Ockenden, where, at age 13 months old, I moved into a council house in Ockenden, Essex. And it's there that I took my first steps across the front room, so I'm told. My grandfather, his name was Bert, he was a boilermaker, so he worked in the shipping industry, and he was also a convener at the Shipbuilding and Boilermakers Union. My father's a shipwright and boat builder. His skills were honed in the East End docks of London. My brother Paul was born in West Ham in 1971, and we stayed at my grandparents', Vi and Bert's home in Canning Town, East London, throughout his birth. So intent was my parents to have Cockney sons, real East End boys, that we then returned to my nan's to stay there for a bit longer, and I went to a little school in the street, Ravenscroft School, just to ensure that my youngest brother was also a real Cockney, born within the sound of both bells. For the rest of our youth, we attended the local schools in Ockenden, where I'll never forget a section in my school report. Darren is a quick learner and he has a pleasant manner. He gets the job done with ease, which he often does with 70% of his effort. Who knows what Darren might achieve if he were able to give 100%. Again, I've mentioned it. You don't know what 100% is. And yeah, I probably did just get through it. Because in my eyes, I was going to be like my father. I was going to be a shipwright. And for that, I only gave what I needed to, until one day I was like him. On from there, finishing school, and after working some weekends with my father in St Catherine's Marina, along with my brothers, we looked to take a trade. Now, my trade was going to be a 8-year apprenticeship as a shipwright plater. So my father and my grandfather's trades combined. Naval architecture, etc., on the Isle of Dogs in East London. Now, at that moment, the yard that I was going to be working with didn't have 8 years' work on their books, and whereas they would usually transfer me from my apprenticeship to an adjacent yard, there were no adjacent yards because Canary Wharf was being built, and the option I was given was to have the same apprenticeship in their other yard in Hull in North England. And I didn't really fancy living in Hull for 8 years, although I didn't know the area. My old man said, look, you got a fork in the road. He said, I've seen a thing in the paper for an apprenticeship with Lloyd's of London as a trainee broker. And I remember going to Lloyd's at Whitechapel in East London. And I walked in, I was suited, booted, sat down waiting to go in, and I looked opposite and there was this guy sitting there. He didn't look old at all, 20s. He had a baby face, bald head, immaculate suit, tailored suit, Rolex, fine shoes, clean cut, tanned. He looked like he had a few quid, but he also looked like he was fucking battered. He looked like he wanted to jump out the fucking window. His demeanour was that he just lost his whole fucking pocket. He'd probably gain it back the following day, but I just didn't fancy that. The other thing was I was hooked on trade and everything that it stood for. So I went in and spoke with the interviewer, and they said, we like guys from East London, you're tough types and you need to be tough in this industry and all this, that. So I left, and I then received a call that I'd been offered the job, but I'd need to give them a decision in a week's time. It transpired that I'd chosen a different route and become a carpenter, and joined a firm that my father became a project manager for, called H. Furman and Son in Ilford. Both my brothers joined me there, and before leaving and doing some other work on some high-value refurbishments, Salman Rushdie, ex-head of MI5, the ex-director of The Last Emperor, sound director Ivan Sharrock, and a few others, we'd landed ourselves this job in Dulwich. And there we are, back to the index offence. And the thing is, you never really know not only how much you're going to be tested, but how much self-control. This isn't just about fighting. This isn't even boxing, controlled punches to the right areas of the body and head. This is a mixture of both. You're fighting because you're drowning, and you're also considering your moves because of the adverse effects. If something you do is picked up on and wrongly decided upon, then you could affect everyone and everything. So you're in this turmoil of emotion. You've got this serious business of your family going on and all the emotional destruction that it gives. And then when fighting it, you've got to be both a fighter and manage yourself so that you can't rock the boat. To add to the misery, and for unknown reasons at that time, Essex Police named my brother's case Operation Westminster. And whilst it took us a little while to understand why the name, as we were in Essex, we were soon to find the real reason that this name was given, because of those that were controlling the case from higher above. Listen in to each episode as I engage you in my personal journey of how a boy growing up on a council estate in Essex would eventually own the most exclusive online private members club in the world.